Pretend play is one of the forms of play that children demonstrate. And the hallmarks of pretend play generally are that children are engaged in make-believe activity. And the make-believe activity can be fairly simple, as pretending to drink tea from a pretend toy cup, or more complex to taking on a role, say baby, in a pretend family situation where there's also a mama and a dada playing and maybe even a grandpa and grandma playing along in a family situation. It's interesting because it's thought that starting about the 1950s, where we see more and more toys being marketed to children, that in fact that sometimes those toys can limit children's play, because if you take an object, like a toy, it can often dictate how the child plays with it. But if the child is given more simple, open-ended objects, then the child has to use their imagination to decide how to use that object. Current researchers are talking about the fact that parents or teachers don't need to buy expensive toys for children, that the best types of objects to supply to children to encourage their pretend play are open-ended objects like blocks, crayons, paper, clay, all those open-ended materials that are kind of the foundation of good early childhood classrooms. That you don't want a lot of commercial products because, like I said, it tends to limit children's play, whereas an open-ended product like a block, a good set of blocks, children can play with that in a different way every day of their life.
Cool. It looks like he got it. Wait, let me see. I'm going to throw him in the water. Cool, let's throw them in the water. Cool. So we can get some fish.
Pretend play is voluntary, and it's chosen by the player, and the player drives it. So if the adult, if the teacher or parent imposes it on children, it's not nearly as effective. And in fact, a big worry we have in today's world, because so much of children's time is scheduled and so many of their play objects draw for one type of play, and they're so supervised all the time that it's thought that children aren't getting the chance to use their imagination and engage in pretend play at the levels that are really needed for good development. It's very important that the adult facilitates play but does not dominate the play. And so that's a fine divide that teachers and parents really need to learn how to negotiate. You want to support the play, encourage the play, and if children kind of get stuck, you want to help them get unstuck and take the next step, but you don't want to direct it.
Blue.
A good early childhood classroom would incorporate a variety of interest centers for children to explore. For instance, any early childhood classroom is usually organized into a number of centers. There's almost always a block center, almost always a small manipulative center where there are Legos and other small blocks for children to use. There's almost always a reading center, a group gathering center, a literacy area, maybe a science center, and maybe a sand and water table. And so those areas are purposefully there to encourage different types of exploration or opportunities for the children to learn. From a parent's point of view, I think when you visit an early childhood classroom, you should ask the teacher how much time the children have to play each day and how those play activities are supervised and organized. Because you would want to look for an environment where the children do have free play opportunities and that the environment is rich to support that in terms of having open-ended activities for them to choose from. Where kind of the rubber often hits the road is when we talk about academic and pre-academic skills and the role of play in facilitating good academic achievement. There's a number of research studies in literacy, language development, math and science, and reading that shows that children who went to preschools where there were large segments of time devoted to rich pretend play, that those children achieve quite well in those areas. And in fact, there's a growing body of research that shows that pretend play is correlated with something called effortful control, which is impulse control, and that is actually more predictive of school success than IQ.
I got more than you. I'm gonna get some fish. Oh, there's another one. Ooh, what fish? Ragazzo!